Okay, so the TT is here in the garage with the Clarity, which you got to admit, the green on yellow combo is killer. I got to admit, I'm sorry. But anyways, what's up guys? Hope you're having a great day today. Today we're going to be talking about my BMW Z3 and why specifically I sold it. So let's get started with that. This is a cold start on a 2016 Audi TT. I do got to admit, at cold startup, she doesn't sound half bad. When it gets warm, that's a different story. Let's go though. Now, the first reason as to why I sold my BMW Z3, and it's kind of the obvious one, it was unreliable. Like, quite literally, getting it after 1 week. Like, 1 week into ownership, I already had a transmission problem with the car. Which is crazy to think about, because, like, I got that car, I looked at the Carfax, I checked everything, and it already had a transmission problem. Now, I don't know if this is the fault of the Z3 or the fault of something else that happened, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But one thing that was apparent from that moment on was this car is going to be broken quite a bit. And I was right. So after fixing the transmission problem, I ran into another issue with the fuel system. Well, not specifically the fuel system, but more of the air intake system. I was running into check engine codes with that. And then from there, I ran into issues with my airbags. I ran into the roof problem. I ran into quite a bit of different issues. My seats weren't moving, for example. That type of thing. Now, obviously, some of these things are bound to happen as a 26-year-old German car, and I could fix it myself. And for some of them, I did. Like, quite literally, went through the engine bay, worked with Thomas quite a bit. At the end of the day, things were consistently breaking, and the tipping point was the misfires. So 3 of my cylinders by the end of the ownership of my Z3, 3 of them were misfiring. It's a 4-cylinder, and 3 of them were not working properly. So that's a bit of a concern if 3 of your cylinders aren't working properly. I mean, that's kind of the case with every car, but like, I mean, especially on a 4-cylinder, if you only have 25% functionality of it. But regardless of that, like, it just was not a reliable vehicle to have. And especially for a daily driver, it was more of a project car. I think somebody put it best in one of my comment sections, and I'll put the comment, I guess, here if I can find it, where they essentially said the Z3 is good as a 7th car. And I kind of have to agree. You need to have like a daily driver, in my opinion, now, if you're going to own, say, something like a Z3, because it'll be a project typically. Now, if you get a really well-sorted one, well-maintained one, that's probably a different story. I mean, that's why I like this Audi TT. It was well-sorted before I got it. And that leads me into reason number 2 as to why I sold my BMW Z3, and that is that I wanted a good daily. I wanted a good daily driver with some features. I mean, obviously features I can live without. Like, I mean, I don't really need a Bluetooth system if I have the USB audio, but other things such as, like, I just wanted to have, you know, insulation. I wanted to have warmth. Like, I want to be able to walk into my car and not be cold from the outside, which this TT does fairly well. Now, I know this may seem like just some of those run-of-the-mill things, but like, when all of it adds up, it just makes things so much better, and it just makes me understand more of, yeah, I definitely need a good daily, especially after driving the Clarity and driving the Prius. Both of those cars, they're newer, they have some more features, and they just make it an easier daily commute. This especially became apparent to me as I was daily driving my Z3 to work every day over the summer, and it would just be a typical pain. Like, quite literally, I gotta wake up in the morning, early in the morning, I'm tired, and I go to start up this loud, almost race car and drive it 20 miles into the city. It's a pain. Like, I loved it. I love that Z3, and I will always have great feelings about it. I will always recommend it over something like a Miata. Sorry, Miata fans, leave your thoughts in the comments below. But I have to say, to drive every day to work, not the car. And on that note of good features, we do need to talk about another reason why I sold the Z3, which was that it was unsafe. Like, quite frankly, safety is something I care about quite a bit, especially as of recent. My family have been in car crashes, my friends have been in car crashes, and all of them have ended up fine because of their car's safety features. Now, compare that to my BMW Z3, where I had airbag lights. I didn't know if the airbags were functional. I had 2 airbags and 2 basically rubber coated braces behind the seats. That was it. So, in other words, I am screwed if I get T-boned or anything like that. Versus this Audi TT here, we have quite a few airbags. So we have the steering wheel airbag, the passenger airbag, we have these side curtain airbags, quite a few different airbags here. And I have to admit, I've seen some Audi TTs get into wrecks and their drivers end up fine. A good example of this is Deji, the big boxing YouTuber, I think KSI's brother. He owned an Audi TT, a black Audi TT, got into a really bad wreck where he flipped the car, and him and his passenger ended up fine. Like, I think he had to get some stitches or something like that, but nothing severe. No one's life was taken. And if you saw the car, you'd assume somebody would be dead. But no, both of them were fine. And I have to admit, the TT safety, that saved them. I have to admit, like, if it was my Z3, those two would be good as dead, like, seriously. And I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to have to think about that at all. So to have something like this definitely makes some more sense in that aspect. Like, having the good safety, it may not prevent everything, but it'll prevent a lot more than the Z3 does. And that's why I didn't want to keep dailying my Z3 anymore. If I had gotten into some type of accident, like knock on car, that nothing happens in this one, but I have been in a few near accidents in that Z3 because quite frankly, where I live, people suck at driving. I'm being honest with that one. People kind of suck at driving. So to have that, I guess, liability on there of just, I can probably end up in a pretty bad state if I get into an accident, is just illuminating over my head was just not it. Like, this one, at least there's a bunch of safety things keeping me good intact. In fact, that accident I mentioned with Comedy Shorts Gamer, Deji, whatever you want to call him, that was part of the reason why I wanted an Audi TT. That thing saved his life, quite frankly. I'm gonna put photos of the accident here. That thing saved his life. All of that damage, and yet him and his passenger are mostly fine. Now moving on to reason number 4 is, or I think I'm on reason number 4, I don't know anymore. But the reason number 4 is that the Z3 was beginning to become a pain. Like I had mentioned, I daily drove that car for work all throughout the summer, and it was just becoming annoying to do. Like, quite literally, hearing that thing start up, rattling my brain. There was a point in time where I had to take a Tylenol every single time I drove that car because of the immense headaches that it was giving me. Not because of any of the reliability problems, but because driving it, quite literally, was giving me a headache. Now, in the weekends, you know, with a project car, that's a different story. And I think a Z3 would be good for that. So who knows, maybe I might get another Z3 to do something like that with. But something for the time being, a daily driver, the TT works. The TT makes so much more sense than something like the Z3. And now the big elephant in the room and the big main reason as to why I sold my BMW Z3, which is the dark truth about the car. And I didn't learn about this until, I guess, early December, and then obviously sold it and picked this up in late December. Now, my Z3, it has had 8 owners. I guess now 9 if you include the dealership where I traded this car into. So it has had, when I owned it, I was the 8th owner of that car. So 8 owners on that Z3, and it has been in a multitude of locations, ranging from New Jersey all the way down south to where I live. Now that may not sound like much, like 8 owners, who cares? I mean, I knew about that. But one of these owners, owner number 6, he's an interesting fellow, I found. I did some research into him, and I talked with the previous owner, talked with him about it a little bit. Turns out he was a Russian used car dealer. Nothing wrong with being Russian, nothing like that. But one thing I did find out is that he was a felon. And again, nothing wrong with being a felon. If you have a criminal history, you have a history. That's life, that happens. But his felonies had to do specifically with his dealership. His dealership, what they would do is they would buy a bunch of crashed cars, like crashed junk cars, fix them up, and then sell them with clean titles on the Carfax. That does lead me to believe that, hey, I think something happened to this Z3, and I was lied to. Like, essentially, I was driving around a salvage title car without even realizing it. Even though it says clean title, it's supposedly a salvage. Now, I had no definitive proof as to if my BMW Z3 was actually involved in some type of incident or if it was just a clean title car that they just so happened to be selling. I found some evidence of paint respray on my mirrors and when I was doing the roof job on the underbody of the car, but that wasn't evidence enough until I went to go trade it in on my Audi TT. When we went there, we found out, and from what the sales guys and the inspectors and the managers and everybody was seeing, was that the car was apparently involved in some type of front-end collision that nobody knew about. I didn't know about it, my family didn't know about it, the previous owner didn't know about it, none of them. So what we happen to believe is that the title fraud had occurred on this BMW Z3, and it involved something in the front end, some type of front-end collision. When that occurred, they bought the car, and then, well, the 6th owner bought the car, fixed it up, and then sold it with a clean title. That's what my current belief is. I don't know if it's true or not, so please don't go stalking the 6th owner or the previous owner and sending them anything about it. This is just what I believe, and I believe that to have happened. Now, obviously, there's a few more reasons as to why I sold my BMW Z3, and I was still trying to find something proper, and something like this, the Audi TT. Now, this car, this is why I sold my BMW Z3 as well, is because this car was such a great deal. Like, I mean, it was one of the cheapest Audi TTs in the USA. I believe out of all the Vegas Yellow Mark III TTs, this is the cheapest one in the entire country right now. There was one that sold on Cars and Bids for 23 grand. There's a TTS right now for sale, I believe in like Albany or something like that, selling for 33 grand. This was $20,950. So compared to those, this was the cheapest Vegas Yellow TT. But even on that note, it's still such a great deal. Like, this was the 10th cheapest Mark III TT in the country, and it has service records out the wazoo, and it's been local in where I live right now its entire life. So from 2016 to 2025, this car has stayed in the exact same area. All but 63 miles were spent here. Those 63 miles were delivery from Germany to Florida. That's about it. But even besides that, this car has been maintained at the Audi dealer where I got this car from its whole life. This Audi dealer has been paying attention and spending time with this car, working on this car for all of 77,000 miles. And yes, you heard me right, 77,000 miles on this Audi TT, which is fairly high mileage for a German car, but you know what? It works because the car is working perfectly. Like, quite literally, it has been driving perfectly fine. Some things have broken, but they've fixed themselves as well. A good example of this is the adaptive headlights. I ran into an adaptive headlight fault after I had to jump start the car, but after one drive, it cleared itself. So we moved. That's good. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is I got such a great deal on this TT that I knew if I let it go, I would regret it forever. And I had that happen once with another white Z3 that I was looking at, and I did not want to have it happen again with this TT. So yeah, I know that makes me sound emotional and all that, but like, I mean, you're not supposed to be emotional when car buying, but it's just logistical. The deal of, I guess, the deal of a lifetime. And I guess that brings us into reason number, I don't know anymore, as to why I sold my BMW Z3, which is that I wanted to try something new. Like, I had that Z3 for 2.5 years. I had driven it to its limits, and I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, I have to say, when it wasn't broken. But I wanted to try something new. Like, this car is a complete difference from my BMW Z3. My BMW Z3 was a 1.9 liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated with a GM 4-speed automatic, whilst this is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with a 6-speed dual clutch transmission. That is quite the difference, you have to admit, from my BMW Z3. Along with that, the interiors are quite different from one another. This car has $6,000 worth of options, by the way, in that I have the quilted seats, I have the 19 alloys, I have the full digital gauge cluster, all of that. So this is a much more tech-heavy car than my Z3 was, which may sound pretty bad, but I mean, you can't lie. Some of these features are fairly cool, such as the adjustable wing, parking sensors, which is more of, hey, it's for a good daily and all that, and then the screen, the digital gauge cluster. This thing is amazing. I love it. But I think on that note, today's video is in fact over, as the goose are honking behind me. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Let me know how you feel about this video in the comments below. And if you like what you're seeing, leave a subscribe. And just like that, I'm out. I'm gonna keep driving this car. This car is so much fun. Peace.